are going to study in detail about the different important helminthic parasites. So firstly, according to the definition and all those features, we are going to study the classification. Helminths, they are multicellular parasites and they are commonly termed as worms. But these topics you might have studied previously also, even in 12th standard you have covered with helminths. But still, as it is an important part of microbiology which deals with the microorganism, parasites are also the members of microorganisms. That's why we are going to go into more details about these organisms. Okay, helminths are commonly called as worms. They are broadly classified on the basis of their body. It is classified into two types as platyhelminths and nematyhelminths. Platy means flat. The body of the parasite is flat dorsoventrally. And the second group is nematyhelminths, which means cylindrical worms. Okay, so this is depending upon the body cavity present or absent in these parasites. Flat worms, they are included in platyhelminths, and nematyhelminths consists of cylindrical worms. The further platyhelminths is classified into cystoda and trematoda, two classes. Cystoda, they are flat tape-like worms, like a tailor tape. They are elongated parasites and their body is segmented. And so they are called as cystors. Kestos means tape. So the body of this parasite, which is flat, it is elongated like a tape. And so these worms, they are commonly called as tapeworms. On the other hand, trematodes, they are leaf-like. The body is unsegmented. And the parasites, they have only one single cell, which is actually having both the sexual reproductive systems, trematodes. Now, nematodes, they are cylindrical worms according to the morphology. And all of these members, they are further classified into different subclasses. I won't go into more details of each of these classes. Up to this stage, cystode, trematode, and nematode, you might have understood that these parasites, either they are tape-like worms, trematodes, they are leaf-like worms, and nematodes, they are cylindrical worms. So further, I won't go into details of other different classes like trematode and nematode, because today we are going to study only the cystoda class. So I won't confuse you, because in the successive lectures, you are going to study trematode as well as nematode in 3 different parts. And during that lecture also, this slide will be projected to understand the classification of these parasites. So at this stage, I won't confuse you with the rest of the 2 classes. So today we will confine our study only to cystoda class. Further, cystoda class is classified into 2 different types on the basis of their head and the mouth structure, into Pseudophilidae and Cyclophilidae. In Pseudophilidae, there is a parasite called as Diphyllobothrium latum, which is a single parasite belonging to this group. The head end is spindle shaped and it has 2 slit-like openings on the lateral surface, which represents the mouth. Okay. Now these 2 slit-like openings, they appear to be a mouth-like structure on the head of the parasite, which is spindle shaped. And that's why it is in the subclass Pseudophilidae. Pseudo means false, philid means mouth. Okay. Then the single genus in this is Diphyllobothrium latum. Philo stands for mouth, having 2 slit-like mouth opening. Bothrium means slits. So the mouth appears as two slits on lateral side, and so the genus is called as Diphyllobothrium and the species Diphyllobothrium latum. Now this parasite, we are not going to go into more details. Just remember it is one of the member of the tapeworm cystores. At the end, we may have some comparative description about this parasite also for you to remember what is important in this parasite. The second subclass is Cyclophylidae. Cyclo means circular, phylid mouth. Now here the head end of the parasite contains circular suckers, cup-like suckers which are present at the anterior end of the head, arranged in a cyclic manner. And that's why it belongs to subclass Cyclophylidae. And in that we are going to study only some of them in detail. I'll just name them at this stage. Taenia, the genus, consists of Taenia saginata and Taenia solium, which are supposed to be human parasites. Then Echinococcus, the species Echinococcus granulosus and Echinococcus multilocularis. Then the third species Hymenolapis, Hymenolapis nana, Hymenolapis diminuta, and Hymenolapis caninum. These are some of the important cystode parasites which infect human being either as a definitive host or as an intermediate host. Out of them, we are going to study only Taenia in more detail, Taenia solium and Taenia saginata, and Echinococcus granulosus, which are said to be most important members of this group that infect human beings. To some extent, we'll also add the note of other parasites to differentiate them from the other members. Okay, so classification at this stage will be considering only up to the cystoda. The rest of the classification in the next lecture we are going to study Trematoda. In that, the same slide will be projected to understand the classification. Okay, and successively nematodes also the same slide will be projected every time. So this is about the classification. Understand the classification where these worms, they are flat worms, hence they belong to platyhelminths. They belong to Cystoda because they are tape-like worms, commonly called as tapeworms. Pseudophylidae subclass, where false mouth-like structure, slit-like opening is present, and Cyclophylidae, where there are suckers, or even in some parasites there are hooklets on the head. Suckers, they are present in a cyclic manner on the head, and so they belong to Cyclophylidae. Members: Taenia, Taenia saginata and Taenia solium, Echinococcus, Echinococcus granulosus, Echinococcus multilocularis, and Hymenolapis, Hymenolapis nana, Hymenolapis diminuta, and Hymenolapis caninum. Now, we'll just have a broad differential features of these three different classes: cystodes, trematodes, and nematodes. How they are broadly classified depending upon the structure of these parasites. Shape: cystodes, they are tape-like worms, commonly called as tapeworms, and the body is segmented. Trematodes, they are leaf-like worms, and the body is unsegmented. Whereas nematodes, they are elongated cylindrical worms. Okay. Now, trematodes, they are leaf-like worms, so they are commonly called as flukes. You might have heard the term liver fluke, which is one of the most important member of this group. Okay. Then, sexes: cystodes, they are monoecious. They are also called as hermaphrodite because both male and female reproductive systems, they are present in the same parasite, and so they are monoecious. Similarly, trematodes, they are also monoecious, but there is an exception. In most of the parasite, male and female reproductive system, they are present in the same parasite. But there is one genus called as cystosoma, where the male and female, they are usually separate. Actually, they are separate. But throughout the life, both male and female, they remain in copulation with one another. And that, hence they are called as monoecious parasite. They never separate from one another. So that's why they are included as monoecious trematode parasite. They are flat leaf-like worms. Okay. Then nematodes, they are dioecious, where the male is separate and the female parasite is separate. For copulation, they have to come together, mate together, and fertilization takes place. So here, the sexual forms of this parasite, the adult worms, they are different from one another, separate. Then, the third character, head end of the parasite. As I've told you, the head end of cystode, it has suckers, which is arranged in a cyclic manner on the head, cup-like openings. But in some of the parasite, even hooklets are present in circles at the anterior end. That you are going to study in the morphology of the adult worm of cystode in detail. Just remember, some of the parasite, they have only suckers arranged in a cyclic manner on the head, whereas some of them, apart from suckers, they also have hooklets on the anterior end. Then trematodes, they have suckers, but no hooklets or no hooks are present. Whereas nematode, they have a well-developed buccal capsule. The mouth is present with teeth or chitinous plates, appears as a true mouth of the parasite. So well-developed buccal capsule is present in case of nematodes. Then the alimentary canal. In case of cystodes, the alimentary canal is absent. And the food which is taken in by the parasite, it is absorbed, the nutrients, they are absorbed by the walls of the segment of the parasite. That we are going to study later on. But at this stage, just remember the alimentary canal in cystode is completely absent. No mouth, no anus. In case of trematodes, it is present, but without the anus. The alimentary canal is blunt. It does not open into the anus. Whereas in case of nematodes, the alimentary canal is well developed with the buccal capsule as well as the anus. So well developed alimentary canal is seen in case of nematodes. Then the body cavity. According to the definition of platyhelminths, cystodes and trematodes, they are flat worms, so body cavity is absent. Whereas in case of nematodes, it is a cylindrical worm. The body cavity is present in which all the different systems, they float in the body cavity. The alimentary canal, the reproductive system, the excretory system, all these systems, they are present inside the cylindrical worm. So they have a body cavity. So these are some of the major differences between the three classes, cystodes, trematodes, and nematodes. Now, we are going to focus our attention to our today's topic of cystodes, where we are going to see the general characters of cystode. Now, these are general characters of all the members. Some of them, they may be exceptional to these characters, but most of them, they have these characters. The first important character is they are long worms. The body is segmented, tape-like worms, so commonly called as tapeworm. You can see the figure on the right side, which shows a tape-like worm. Now the size, it measures from few millimeters to several meters. The smallest size of a tapeworm is shown on the left side in millimeters. It is Echinococcus granulosus adult worm, measuring of about just 3 to 6 millimeter in size. The size is in millimeters just. And the body is made up of just 3 to 4 segments. Whereas the longest tapeworm isolated till date is of about 10 meters in length. Just understand the size of the tapeworm. The longest tapeworm as yet isolated was measured up to 10 meters. But even if the length is longer, the body is completely flat, and that's why it remains adhered to the mucosal surface of the intestine, which is the site of localization of these adult worms in the definitive host. Okay, so such a lengthy worm may be present in the intestine of definitive host, the adult worm. After these three characters, the fourth character is the adult worm and its different regions. To study the adult worm, we can classify or we can divide the part of adult worm into three different portions. First region is the head region. You can see on the slide. Head region, which is commonly called as the scolex. Second is the neck, and third is the body or the trunk, which is commonly called as strobila. Now, if you see the head end at the anterior region, it has got cup-like suckers. Usually, 4 suckers are present on the head, arranged cyclically on the head, and in some parasites, rows of hooklets may be present at the anterior end. Now, these rows of hooklets, they are called as rostellum. So, suckers are the most important part which is responsible for attachment of the parasite to the intestinal wall. In those parasites where rostellum is not present. But in some parasite where rostellum is present, this rostellum, which are the hooklets, they are responsible for attachment of the parasite to the intestinal wall. And with the help of suckers, they intake the food material, the nutrients. Now, just below to that is a short neck. Now, this neck actually is a germinal area. A very short neck is present, but it is very, very important. Why? Because it is germinal in its function. From this germinal layer, the parasite starts producing its further body where segments are formed. So segmentation of the body starts from the germinal area of the neck, that is the lowest part of the neck. And 1-to-1 segments, they are formed from the germinal layer. As one segment is formed, during the formation of second segment, the first one is pushed down. And in this manner, the whole body is produced. That means 1-to-1 segments, they are produced one by one and they are descended downward. And the whole body is produced. And this process of segmentation of the body is called as strobulation or production of the body. Now, each segment, as it descends downward, the segments which are near to the neck, they are immature segments. Why? Because they are still to be developed. They are still to be matured. So initial segments just near to the neck, they are immature segments. And as the body or strobulation takes place, 1-to-1 segments, they are pushed down. They undergo maturation, especially with respect to the reproductive system. Now, this reproductive system, each segment contains both the reproductive systems, male and the female reproductive system. And as they descend downward, they undergo maturation. That is, the male and female reproductive system gets completely matured as they descend downward. After maturation of male and female reproductive system in the segment, fertilization takes place, the ovum is produced, the eggs are pushed up into the uterus, and ultimately, as these segments where the eggs are filled in the uterus, as they descend downward, these segments start becoming gravid, during which the reproductive systems, they are completely distinguished, they are completely extinguished, they are disintegrated, and only the uterus remains with the eggs which are produced in the uterus. And such segments, they are called as gravid segments. They contain only the uterus filled with numerous eggs. The sexual reproductive system, they are completely disintegrated. So now this strobila or the body can be classified into 3 different regions again. Just near to the neck, the segments, they are immature with respect to reproductive system. The middle portion, the segments, they are mature with respect to the reproductive system, male and female reproductive system. They are completely matured. And at the end, they are the gravid segments, which contains only the uterus, which is filled with eggs. Now, this is about the 4th character where we have studied the details, morphological details of the adulthood. Now, the 5th important character, sexes, as I've told you, they are monoecious. Both sexual reproductive systems, they are present in the same parasite. Both reproductive systems, they are present in the mature segment. Now we are going to go into the details of single segment which is mature with respect to the reproductive system. Okay, monoecious parasite, both male and female reproductive system present in the same segment. Each segment has both these reproductive systems. So we are going to study only one single segment which is completely mature. Now here there is a big figure which is a diagrammatic representation of the details of the mature segment, and to the left the pink color is the slide prepared from the original tapeworm observed under low power objective, which is stained to identify or to visualize the reproductive system in detail. Okay, now we'll start the description of reproductive system with the female reproductive organs. Firstly, the female reproductive organs. The female reproductive system actually is positioned in the ventral surface of the segment. It may contain 1 or 2 ovaries, which are usually lobed. And these ovaries, they are connected to a space in the center, which is called as the oocyte. Now these ovaries open into the oocyte with the oviduct. Now this central space, which is called as the oocyte, it is the area where the ovum is fertilized by male gamete, the sperm. So this is the area of fertilization, oocyte. Okay. Now, another opening is present where the vagina arises. It runs a tortuous route, bulges up with a sac-like structure called as seminal receptacle, and later on gets constricted and opens into a common opening at the lateral surface, which represents the vagina. And the common opening at the lateral surface is called as the genital pore or genital atrium, where male and female genital organs open together. So this is a structure which is present at the lateral surface, the genital pore or genital atrium. The same genital atrium, in case of Diphallobacterium latum, it is positioned in the ventral surface, mid-ventral surface. Okay. So this vagina, which opens into the common genital pore, runs into a tubular structure to form a sac-like structure called a seminal receptacle, where the male gametes or the sperm, they are collected. And from here, these sperm, they are carried into the oocyte. And these sperms, they mate with the ovum, which is produced from the ovary. And after fertilization, the eggs which are produced, they are pushed up into the uterus. Now this uterus, actually in some parasite, it is a single structure, single sac-like structure that runs a tortuous route up to the upper end of the segment. But in some, this uterus is laterally lobed. And the number of lobes is very important for identification of that particular organism, or that particular genus or species of that particular parasite. Okay. Then there are other certain glands which open into the oocyte, which are the Mealy's gland. Mealy's gland, they are responsible for secretion of certain secretions that are important for maturation and fertilization of the ovum into the oocyte. So these Mealy's gland, they play a very important role of nourishment of the fertilized egg. And then after fertilization, these eggs are pushed up into the uterus. And the uterus gets completely filled up with hundreds of eggs together. One single segment can produce number of eggs. More than hundreds of eggs are produced in one single segment. You can just assume, if it is a very long parasite with numerous segments, you can assume the number of eggs which are liberated by one single parasite. It may be in thousands or even in lakhs. Okay. So this is about the female reproductive system containing ovary, single or lobe, and the vagina, which opens into a common genital opening called as the genital atrium. Now the male reproductive system, on the other hand, male reproductive system, it is positioned in the dorsoventral surface on the other side and consists of testes which are seen in the form of follicles distributed laterally in number of in the segment. More than 100 to 300 testes may be present in the form of follicles, and these, they are connected with a common duct from the vas efferens to the vas deferens, and this vas deferens later on gets coiled up or convoluted into spermatic duct. Now this spermatic duct opens into a sac-like structure which is called as the serous sac. And as it enters the serous sac, it represents the serous of the male parasite, the penis of the male parasite, which again opens into the common genital opening called as the genital atrium. So this serous sac, which contains the serous, opens into the genital atrium. The sperm which is produced in the testis, in the follicular form. It is carried through the vas deferens, then into the spermatic duct, and then in the serous sac. And from the serous, it is thrown into the common genital opening, where the vagina also opens. Now these sperms, through the vagina, they are carried to the seminal receptacle. And from the seminal receptacle, they reach the oocyte, where they fertilize the ovum from the ovary. So this is about the male and female reproductive systems which are present in the same segment of the parasite. And this parasite undergoes self-fertilization, where numerous eggs are produced in the uterus. Rarely, sometimes, when the parasite is present in the intestine and when it gets folded up, cross-fertilization between two segments may sometimes occur. It's a very rare instance, but it is possible. So these parasites, which are called as the monoecious parasite, having both male and female reproductive system in the same segment, they self-fertilize and produce eggs. Okay? So this is about the reproductive system. Apart from reproductive system, as I've told you, it does not have the alimentary canal, but the excretory system is there. This excretory system is represented by excretory canal around each segment. The nervous system is also present in the form of vital area on the periphery of each segment, which is well developed. So excretory and nervous system, they are present. Body cavity is absent, and the reproductive system is complete, male as well as female reproductive system. Okay. Now, we have seen the development and maturation of the reproductive system, which produces eggs after fertilization. How is the egg? The important characters of egg are very, very, very important because these are to be identified under the microscope during stool examination. So understand how the eggs are. The egg of cystodes, especially Taenia and Echinococcus, it has an outer egg shell when it is produced inside the oocyte and pushed up into the uterus. Now this egg shell contains yolk material which nourishes the egg or ovum inside the eggshell. Now this eggshell actually is a very delicate structure and may be ruptured during the release of the eggs out of the body or out of the segment of the parasite. Now inside this eggshell, there is a small thin embryophore initially, which is very, very thin. And when the outer eggshell is ruptured, this embryophore slowly gets developed and it gets thickened so that it can protect the inner ovum. So actually this is the embryophore which later on, when it gets thickened, it gets radially striated. Longitudinal lines appear on the surface, radial striation. And the inner ovum, which is called as the oncosphere, a spherical structure which contains 3 pairs of hooklets. As they are spiny hooklets, 3 pairs, it is called as oncosphere. Onco means hooklets. So these have 3 pairs of hooklets, making a total of 6 hooks inside the ovum. Such a ovum is called as the oncosphere, having 6 hooklets. And so this egg is called as hexacanth egg. Hexa means 6, canth means spiny hooks. So such a hook is a very characteristic feature of cystode members. Taenia solium, Taenia saginata, Echinococcus granulosus, and Echinococcus multilocularis. The eggs morphologically are one and the same. They cannot be differentiated on the basis of the details of the egg. But it is necessary to understand with respect to the pathogenicity of this parasite. Now, such eggs, they may measure of about 20 to 43 micron in size. Now remember the size of this egg. It is 20 to 43 micron. Varies according to the species of the parasite. When the egg is of about 20 to 30 micron in size, the inner oncosphere approximately measures of about just 10 to 12 micron in size. The inner oncosphere. It is necessary for you to understand the size of oncosphere, where it is just 10 to 12 micron in size. But the complete egg, it is 20 to 43 micron in size. Okay. Now, development of the larval form. We have seen the development of adult worm. We have seen how the egg is formed, the morphology of the egg. Now the larval form of this parasite. The egg, as I have told you, it is 20 to 43 micron in size. Oncosphere of approximately 14 to 20 micron in size, present in the intestine, circulates into the circulation and reaches the muscles, where the oncosphere gives rise to the larval form. The size of oncosphere, as I've told you, it is either 10 to 12 micron in size or 14 to 20 micron in size. But definitely it is measured in microns, where this oncosphere, after infection by ingestion, the eggs which are consumed, the inner oncosphere is released in the intestine. It penetrates the intestinal wall, carried through the portal circulation into the general circulation, and then it settles into different internal organs, where it gives rise to the larval form. Now, oncosphere, according to the morphology, it is measured in microns, maximum of about 20 micron. But when it settles in the tissues, it may enlarge up to 1 centimeter in diameter, or 1 centimeter in its morphology. Oncosphere, measured in microns, enlarges its size in the tissues where it settles, giving rise to the sac-like structure called as cysticercus, which is the larval form of the parasite. Okay. Now, the larval form of Taenia saginata, it is called as Cysticercus bovis, whereas larval form of Taenia solium, it is called as Cysticercus cellulosum. And these larval forms, which are called as Cysticercus in common, measures of about 5 to 10 millimeters, that is up to 1 centimeter in diameter. This is about the Taenia species, where the larval forms, they are called as Cysticercus. Cysticercus bovis in case of Taenia saginata, and Cysticercus cellulosae in case of Taenia solium. But the larval form of Echinococcus granulosus, it is called as the hydatid cyst. Okay. So hydatid cyst is the larval form of Echinococcus granulosus. How it develops and what are the important features, we are going to go into the details of that, major details about hydatid disease, because this form is present in the intermediate host because it is the larval form. It is present in the muscles of intermediate host or in the muscular organs of intermediate host, where it gives rise to the larval form hydatid, where it gives rise to the larval form called as the hydatid cyst. Okay. Now, these are the members which we are going to study in this particular topic, Diphyllobathrium latum. Now, this slide I have projected very purposefully because commonly during your exams in the practicals or in the theory MCQs, the questions on this slide are commonly asked. What are the common names of these particular parasites? Diphyllobathrium latum. What is the common name? It is the fish tapeworm, Taenia saginata. The common name is beef tapeworm, Taenia solium. It is the pork tapeworm, Echinococcus granulosus. It is called as dog tapeworm. Echinococcus multilocularis, again a dog tapeworm. Hymenolapis nana, it is called as dwarf tapeworm. Hymenolapis diminuta, it is called as rat tapeworm. And Diphylidium canium, it is called as double-cored dog tapeworm. Okay. Now these names are given according to the host in which these parasites infect. Either it may be in the form of definitive host or it may be in the form of intermediate host. But apart from man, the other host in which these parasites infect, on the basis of those animals, the tapeworms are made. Okay. Now, some important features about the life cycle of different tapeworms. As we are going to study only some of them, I am projecting some of the important organisms or important parasites belonging to the cystode family, which we are going to study in detail, and about the description of their host. Okay. Now, in previous lectures, you have studied protozoan parasites, where you have studied the definition of definitive host and intermediate host, which is usually related to the presence of sexual reproductive cycle or asexual reproductive cycle. Here also, similar type of terminologies to describe the host is there, such as definitive host and intermediate host. But the definition slightly differs. How? I'll tell you. Here, in case of helminths, the definitive host is the one which harbors the adult parasite. Okay? It is nothing related to the sexual and asexual method of reproduction. The host that harbors the adult worm is called as the definitive host. And the host that harbors the larval form of the parasite is called as the intermediate host. Okay. So in case of Diphyllobathrium latum, man is supposed to be the definitive host, and that's why the stage seen in man is adult worm. Other natural definitive host of this parasite, dogs and cats. And intermediate host, there are two intermediate hosts in its life cycle. Cyclops, which are present in the water, and fish. These are the two intermediate hosts required to complete their life cycle. Okay. So man being the definitive host, the stage present in man is the adult worm. Taenia saginata and Taenia solium. Man acts as the definitive host, hence the adult worms are present. The intermediate host of Taenia saginata is cow, because it is beef tapeworm. Taenia solium, the intermediate host is pig, called as pork tapeworm. Now remember, in case of Taenia solium, man sometimes may act as an intermediate host. In that case, we may occasionally observe the larval form of this parasite. And what is the larval form of Taenia solium called as? It is called as Cysticercus cellulosae. So rarely we may observe in the muscular organ of human being the Cysticercus cellulosae when it acts as an intermediate host. But it is a very rare event. Usually it is a definitive host. Echinococcus granulosus, on the other hand, man actually is the intermediate host, accidental intermediate host. The definitive host, they are the dog, wolf, jackals, and other wild canine animals. Very rarely, man acts as the intermediate host. And when man acts as the intermediate host, the larval form of the parasite is present in the human being. What is the larval form of this parasite called as? It is called as hydatid cyst. Now, such hydatid cyst is present in the muscular organs of human being, as human is the intermediate host of Echinococcus granulosus, as well as Echinococcus multilocularis. So these important terminologies with respect to definitive host, intermediate host, if you have understood, you will be able to understand the life cycle very, very easily. Okay, remember Diphyllobothrium, Taenia solium, Taenia sagenata, man is the definitive host. Adult worms are present in the intestine of human being. Whereas Echinococcus granulosus, dog is the definitive host in which the adult worms are present. Man is the intermediate host where hydatid cyst is present, which is the larval form of the parasite. So we'll study Taenia sagenata and Taenia solium together to understand the life cycle, because the life cycle is one and the same. Pathogenicity as well as laboratory diagnosis is also one and the same. So we'll study these two parasites together. Taenia sagenata, beef tapeworm, commonly called as, and Taenia solium, pork tapeworm. Beef tapeworm because cattle, that is cows and buffalo, they are the intermediate hosts of this parasite. And Taenia solium, pigs are the intermediate host. If it is the intermediate host, definitely the larval form of the parasite is present in this intermediate host. Which is the larval form? Cystisarcus. Man is the definitive host of this parasite because the adult worms, they are present in the intestine of human being. Okay. Now, in the lower picture, I have shown cattle, pigs, and the food through which we get infected. As I have told you, Cystisarcus, the larval form, is present in the muscular organs of intermediate host, cows and pigs. When such muscles containing Cystisarcus, which is singular, plural, it is Cystisarcae. When we consume Cystisarcae from the flesh of these animals, undercooked or raw, man gets infected with the larval form, that is the Cystisarcus. Okay. Now this is the slide that shows Cystisarcus in more detail. The flesh of animal containing the Cystisarcae in the muscles, Taenia solium, cysts which are present approximately 1 centimeter in size. And what is that? It is a sac-like or bladder-like structure which contains the larval form of the parasite. You can see at the tip of the arrow, there is the head end of the larval form having 4 suckers. Such a larval form is present invaginated into the sac-like structure called as the Cystisarcus, which is present in the muscles of infected intermediate host, cows and pigs. Okay. Now, when these Cystisarcae, they are consumed by the definitive host, that is human being, the inner daughter parasite, it protrudes out from the sac-like structure, and with the help of those suckers, it attaches to the intestinal wall of human being. Human being, the definitive host. And when it gets attached to the surface of the intestinal wall, it feeds on the intestinal nutrients, and slowly the body starts undergoing strobulation, segmentation, more and more segments are produced, mature. Later on, after fertilization, they go on producing large number of eggs which are pushed up into the uterus, and the segment becomes gravid as it descends downward. So this is how the infection takes place. In the intestine, the adult worm undergoes strobulation, maturation, and the gravid segments which are filled with eggs. These eggs, they are liberated when the segment is completely disintegrated or when it is crushed. So usually when the gravid segment, which are very weak, it slowly gets disintegrated and the eggs from the uterus, they are liberated. Now during laying of the egg, the outer egg shell may be disrupted and the embryophore may become thickened, radially striated, containing the ovum with 3 pairs of hooklets. This is a very, very characteristic feature of the Taenia members, hexacanth eggs. And such eggs, they are passed into the feces of human being, which is the definitive host. Sometimes the gravid segments, as they are very weak, they may get detached from the surface of the body of the parasite. And even the gravid segments, they may be seen in the feces. Or sometimes the head end of the parasite also may get detached and may be seen in the feces. Normally, the hexacanth eggs are seen in the feces, but sometimes we may observe the gravid segment with the uterus, or sometimes the mature segments even may get detached from the body of this parasite and may be seen in the feces. So usually detection of eggs may diagnose the case of infection with cystoid member, but you cannot identify whether it is Taenia solium, it is Taenia saginata, or it is Echinococcus granulosus, because the eggs of all these parasites is one and the same according to the morphology. Slight difference in their size, which is not very significant. So for identification of species, it is necessary to observe the segments for the presence of uterus, its lobes, or the mature segments for the number of ovaries, number of testes, which may differentiate the particular species. Even the size of segment, the breadth and length of the segment may also differentiate the parasite. Okay. Now, life cycle in short, starting with the presence of adult worms in the intestine of human being, liberation of hexacanth egg in the feces. Sometimes the gravid segment or the mature segments, they may be released. The size matters in the differentiation of the species of Taenia, but mostly the hexacanth egg, which is the infective form for intermediate host. Intermediate host, while grazing in contaminated grass or while drinking contaminated water with the eggs, they ingest the hexacanth egg. The hexacanth egg, outer striated embryophore, is destroyed in the duodenum, and the oncosphere is released into the intestine. Oncosphere, the ovum containing 3 pairs of hooklets. But this ovum or oncosphere containing 3 pairs of hooklets, with the help of hooklets, it attaches to the intestinal wall. And when it attaches to the intestinal wall, it penetrates the intestinal mucosa, enters the portal circulation or the mesenteric lymphatics, come into the general circulation, and is carried to the different muscular organs. And when this oncosphere settles in the particular muscular organ, it gives rise to the larval form, that is the sac-like structure called as the cystis surface, in which the larval parasite is invaginated in an invaginated form. When such flesh is consumed undercooked or through contaminated undercooked meat or raw, man gets infection with the cysticercus, where the parasite, when it comes into the duodenum, it protrudes out from the sac-like structure. With the help of suckers, it attaches to the intestinal wall and the body undergoes strobulation. After strobulation, there is sexual maturation of the segments. Eggs are produced in the uterus and they are liberated in the intestinal fluid. And the life cycle continues. Now, in case of Tinea saginata specifically, the head end which is present, it does not have hooklets. The suckers are present in a quadrate manner so that they can hold up into the intestinal mucosa. Whereas in case of Tinea solium, the head end is globular, has a row of hooklets with the help of which it can attach to the intestinal wall, and through the suckers it can intake the nutrients. Okay, so these are the important characters where egg is the infective form for intermediate host and the cysticercus is the infective form for human being, man, which is the definitive host. Infection in human being where the adult worm is present, it is called as teniasis. But infection of the intermediate host where the larval worm is present, it is called as cysticercosis. Remember these two important terminologies with respect to the infection caused by this parasite. Even if the parasite is the same, the stage of infection differs according to the host. In definitive host, it is called as teniasis because the adult worm is present, whereas in intermediate host, the larval form is present. So the infection is called as cysticercosis. Okay, in man, it is teniasis. Mode of infection is by ingestion of undercooked meat or beef or food, and adult worm is present in the intestine. As I told you, these adult worms, they are very flat tape worms. They usually remain confined to the surface of the mucosa where they may not give rise to any symptoms. The infection may be symptomless, but occasionally a person may show certain vague abdominal symptoms, abdominal discomfort, chronic indigestion, anemia, and intestinal disorders such as diarrhea and constipation. Now, important feature regarding cysticercosis, as I have told you, when man rarely acts as the intermediate host of Tinea solium. It has not been seen with Tinea saginata. But in case of Tinea solium, when man acts as the intermediate host, consumes the eggs through contaminated food and water, he may get infected. And when man acts as the intermediate host, the infection is called as cysticercosis. And this is seen only with Tinea solium, where the cysticerci may be present in the skeletal muscle, may be seen in the eyes or in the brain. It's a very rare event, but remember, man may act as an intermediate host for Tinea solium specifically. Cysticercosis in human being. Larval worms effect depends upon the localization of the cysticerca. If it is the eyes, ophthalmic examination may be done to observe the presence of cysticerci, the bladder-like structure in the eyes. Localization usually occurs in the subcutaneous tissue, giving rise to the enlargement or nodule formation under the muscles. It causes palpable and visible nodule. In brain, it leads to epileptic attack. In eyes, it is diagnosed by ophthalmoscopic examination. So here you can see a person, a small adolescent, where the cysticerci is present in the muscles of the tongue, a small nodular lesion. In the second figure, you can see the cysticerci present in the muscles of human being, approximately measuring of about 1 centimeter in size. Cysticerci in the heart, the lesions, you can see small cysticerci. Cysticercosis of the eyes, you can see the cysticerci with the protruding larval form in the eyes. Cysticercosis of brain. Here you can see more properly the cysticerci which are present in the second figure on the left. This can be diagnosed by CT scan, MRI, or by ELISA for the detection of antigen of this particular organism. It is called as neurocysticercosis. For laboratory diagnosis, stool is the specimen to be collected. Observe macroscopically the presence of segment, whether it is gravid segment or a mature segment. It usually is whitish in color. Rarely, we may also observe the head end of the parasite. Observe for the presence of hooks and suckers. If there are hooks, the parasite is Taenia solium. If there are no hooklets on the surface of the head, there it is Taenia saginata. Microscopically, we can observe the egg. Now remember, you are supposed to understand the description of the egg, because very often in your exam, especially in the practical exam, you are asked to describe the egg. When you observe it under the microscope, you are supposed to describe the egg. Characters of egg: it is spherical and brown in color because it is bile stain. Now understand the concept of bile stain, because bile stain is always a question asked to each and every student during the practicals. What is meant by bile stain? Do you use bile for the staining of eggs? That is the question usually. Now here in this case, it is nothing related to the staining process which is done in the laboratory for the staining of the eggs. It is that when the parasite is present in the adult form in the intestine of human being, the parasite feeds on the bile. And this bile, which is fed by the parasite, it reaches the uterus of each segment, where the yellowish colored egg stains brownish in color. The outer embryophore, at least, it appears brown in color, because when it comes in contact with bile, it turns from yellowish color to brown in color. And such parasite which feed on bile, their eggs appear brown in color. But those parasites which do not feed on bile, their eggs are not bile stained. Their eggs are not brown in color. They remain colorless. This is the important feature which you are supposed to understand about bile stained term, which is used to describe the eggs of certain organisms. See, here it is a bile stained egg, brown in color, measuring about 20 to 43 micron in size. Thick walled embryophore is the outermost cover. It is not the egg shell. Remember, it is readily striated. You can see the striations on the surface of the embryophore. Oncosphere approximately measures of about 14 to 20 micron in size, with 3 pairs of hooklets. Does not float on saturated salt solution. And this is the infective form for cattle and pigs, which are the intermediate ones. A red asterisk has been shown over there. It means the eggs of Taenia saginata and Taenia solium, they are not easily identified on the basis of their morphological characters or any other characters described above. For differentiation of species of Taenia solium and Taenia saginata, you are supposed to observe for the differential features of the segments. Okay. Then Microscopy, for observing the head end, you can see globule. In case of Taenia saginata, it is quadrate with 4 suckers, no hooklets. Taenia solium, it is globular, having a row of hooklets on the surface with 4 suckers, and the gravid segments showing lobate uterus. The number of lobes of the uterus may be important for the differentiation of these two important species. Okay. Then some differential characters: Taenia saginata and Taenia solium. Length 5 to 10 meters in case of Taenia saginata. Taenia solium 2 to 3 meters in length. Head end large quadrate without rostellum and hooks. Suckers are pigmented. In case of Taenia solium, they are small, globular with rostellum and hooks. Suckers are not pigmented. Proglottids or the segments. Number of segments in case of Taenia saginata, it is largest. 1000 to 2000 segments may be present. In case of Taenia solium, 800 to 900 segments are present. Uterus, it is lateral, shows lateral branches 15 to 30 on each side. In case of Taenia solium, lateral branches are 5 to 10 on each side. Vagina, a vaginal sphincter is present in case of Taenia saginata. Vaginal sphincter is absent in case of Taenia solium. The number of ovaries, 2 ovaries are present in Taenia saginata without any accessory lobe. Whereas in case of Taenia solium, 2 ovaries are present with the accessory lobe. Testis, it is about 300 to 400 in number follicles, and in case of Taenia solium, it is less. Diagnosis of cysticercosis in human being, as cysticercosis is seen only in case of Taenia solium. In the muscular organs, you can observe the presence of cysticerci. In the subcutaneous tissue also, you can observe the nodular lesions. If you go for a nodular biopsy, you can observe the cysticerci. Calcified cysticerci may be seen in X-ray, CT scan, or MRI scan. Indirect hemagglutination test can be done for the detection of antibodies using antigen collected from the pigs, cysticerci. Antigen detection in the serum and CSF can be done by ELISA. And of course, a history of teniasis is very important, because if the person is suffering from teniasis, the adult worms are present in the intestine, which liberates the egg in the intestine. And such eggs may undergo disintegration of the outer embryophore, where the oncosphere is released in the intestine itself. And this oncosphere may directly invade the intestinal wall. So this is self-fertilization, self-infection or auto-infection. So a history of teniasis to reveal auto-infection caused by the parasite. Treatment: praziquantel is the drug of choice. Niclosamide is the other drug. The second organism, Echinococcus granulosus, dog tapeworm. Here, man acts as the intermediate host. Causes uniocular hydatid disease. Definitive host: dog, wolf, jackals, and fox. Intermediate host is man. It is an accidental intermediate host. Natural intermediate host: cattle and sheep. Morphology: these are the small tapeworms measuring of about 3 to 6 millimeter in size, half a centimeter or just a little bit more, having only 3 to 4 segments. Egg similar to that of Taenia, and when it infects the intermediate host, where man is the intermediate host, after consumption of consumption of eggs, The hexakinth egg embryo is liberated, penetrate the intestinal wall, and is carried through the circulation to the portal circulation to the liver, from the liver to the lungs, and from the lungs to the heart, and then into the general circulation. And when it reaches the muscular organs, here it gives rise to hydatid cyst, which is the larval form. Not going into the details of the adult worm. First initial segment, it is immature form. The middle is the mature segment, and the lowest is the gravid segment. Life cycle same as that of Taenia, but here man acts as the intermediate host. Okay. Then hydatid cyst. It is situated superficially usually in the form of visual nodules. Majority of the cases, they are asymptomatic. Pressure effect varies according to the site of the cyst. Now, more importantly, what you are supposed to understand in case of life cycle is, in man, where human being gets infected with the consumption of the egg of Echinococcus. The oncosphere, which is released in the intestine, it penetrates the intestinal wall. Through the portal circulation, it is carried to the liver. But here, liver actually acts as the filter for oncosphere. And that's why most of the oncosphere, they settle in the liver. But those that cross the liver and reach the pulmonary circulation, the lungs act as the secondary filter or second filter, where some of the oncospheres, they lodge in the lungs. And later on, those which pass the lungs, they are carried through the systemic circulation to the different internal organs, involving the kidney as well as the brain. So liver and lung are the primary sites of infection, where they are withheld back as filters. And that's why hydatid cyst in the liver or in the lungs is very important for us to understand the pathogenicity of this organism. Where the oncosphere, it gets developed into a very large sac-like structure called as hydatid cyst. Okay, that we are going to study in hydatid cyst. Now here the diagram shows a visible nodular lesion subcutaneously present where the oncosphere has been developed into a larval form. Now this actually is a very rare instance where superficial lesion or superficial hydatid cyst may be seen. Usually it is carried to the internal organs, muscular organs, where it gives rise to hydatid cyst. But we are supposed to understand what is a hydatid cyst. Hydatid cyst, it consists of two layers, ectocyst and endocyst. Ectocyst is the outermost layer which appears white, hard, boiled egg, a laminated hyaline membrane. Now this outer layer comprises of the ectocyst, whereas just below to that is the endocyst, where it is a cellular membrane or a germinal layer, gives rise to brood capsule, sac-like structure, brood capsule, in which the daughter protoscolysis are developed. Protoscolysis, scolex means head, proto means daughter. So daughter parasite heads are seen in the brood capsule, which are developed from the germinal layer of the cyst, hydatid cyst. Now such numerous hydatid cysts, they are developed inside a mother hydatid cyst from the germinal layer. The brood capsule which is produced, which is a sac-like structure in which small daughter heads of the parasite, they are developed, which are called as protoscolysis. So this actually is a mother cyst or mother hydatid cyst in which numerous brood capsules may develop containing the protoscolysis. And each brood capsule may later on get converted into a daughter cyst. And such numerous daughter cysts may be accumulated in the mother cyst. Now here I have shown the histological feature of development of hydatid cyst. You can see the ectocyst, which is a laminar layer. Below this, there is the endocyst, which is a germinal layer. This germinal layer initially produces a protrusion, which later on becomes a vesicular structure. Being a germinal layer, it can also secrete certain secretions, which is rich in different salts. Sodium chloride, sodium sulfate, sodium phosphate, and sodium and calcium combinations of succinic acid. Such numerous chemical composition is made up of as the hydatid fluids. Now this hydatid fluid, which contains all these minerals, it is very, very pharmacologically active anaphylactic secretion. It is also responsible for nourishment of the daughter parasites inside the brood capsule. Now such a capsule or such a cyst produced in the muscles of the human host, it is covered by a fibrous capsule which is laid down by the host. And hence, such hydatid cyst is protected from the defense mechanism of the host by its own fibrous capsule. And that's why it is not destroyed. Now, if you can see, from the germinal layer, brood capsules are developed in which the daughter parasites or protoscolysis are produced. Protoscolysis, in the top figure I have shown, it is the invaginated head of the parasite, daughter parasite. Later on, this gets exvaginated, the lower figure, and you can see the rostellum and the suckers around it, and a single segment, which is the neck. And 2 to 3 segments may later on produce where it gets matured into the adulthood. This is called as uniocular hydatid disease. Now, if you can see the hydatid cyst, these are the excised hydatid cysts from cases of hydatid disease. You can see it as a water-filled balloon, जो होली में खेलते हैं वैसे दिखता है. What does it contain? It contains the hydatid fluid. It is clear, colorless or pale yellowish in color, pH 6.7, contains sodium chloride, sodium sulfate, sodium phosphate, and sodium and calcium salts of succinic acid. It is very antigenic in nature and used for immunological test, which is called as the Cassoni's intradermal test, done for the detection of immediate hypersensitivity reaction. Just 0.1 ml is injected intradermally, and within few minutes you observe an immediate hypersensitivity reaction, type 1 hypersensitivity, that is anaphylaxis. Okay, then it is highly toxic, gives rise to anaphylactic reaction. Hydatid sand, it is the collection of brood capsules along with the loose free scolysis or sometimes loose hooklets which settle in the bottom of the hydatid cyst. It appears as sand, so it is called as hydatid sand. Now here you can see the hydatid cyst in the lungs, where lung act as the second filter. In the liver, where liver acts as the first filter. In the left kidney, you can observe the hydatid cyst, the enlargement up to several centimeters, more than 15 centimeter in size. The mother cyst may be. The daughter cyst usually measures of about just 5 to 10 centimeter in diameter. Abdominal hydatid cyst, you can observe the capsule which has surrounded the inner mother hydatid cyst. It is also innervated with the blood vessels, and that's why it is completely protected from the immune defense mechanism of the host. Because a capsule, fibrous capsule, is laid down around the cyst. Ocular hydatid cyst. Hydatid cyst in the brain, cerebral hydatidosis. Laboratory diagnosis, Cassoni's test, intradermal test, 0.1 ml of hydatid fluid injected intradermally, observed for the immediate hypersensitivity reaction. Blood examination, eosinophilia. Serology, precipitation test, complement fixation test, flocculation test, immunofluorescence assay, immunoelectrophoresis. These are some of the tests which can be done for the detection of the antigen. Radiology of the particular organ to detect hydatid cyst, lung, liver, or brain. Treatment, no specific drug is available for the treatment of hydatid cyst because it is protected by the fibrous capsule of the host. So no drug can penetrate the hydatid cyst. Prophylactically, deworming of the dogs with antihelminthics is important to destroy the larval form, the adult worm. Personal prophylaxis by washing hands before meals. And this is the slide that shows the sizes of eggs of cystors. First two, they are of Echinococcus and Taenia species. Morphologically, they are one and the same, similar to one another. Slight difference in their size. H. nana, which is much more bigger than that, measures of about 45 micron in size. D. latum, measures of about just 85 micron in size. Similar size of D. minuta, it is spherical, and D. caninum, or it is Diphylidium caninum, which is the largest cystod egg. And these are some of the important features which you are supposed to remember. You can observe this slide in the textbook as well of KD Chatterjee. The last figure shown for cystodes, to remember the important features of this parasite with respect to the host, with respect to the adult worms, with respect to the differential characters of the head end and the proglottids of the segments, the size of egg, intermediate host, and the larval forms. Okay, so here we finish up with our today's topic on cystodes. We have covered the major important organisms, Taenia solium and Taenia saginata, and Echinococcus granulosus. Remember, Echinococcus granulosus, man is the intermediate host where the larval form is present. It is the hydatid cyst, which is the larval form of the parasite. If the host has been infected with Echinococcus, development of hydatid cyst in muscular organ is a very, very dangerous clinical manifestation. Why? Because the hydatid fluid, if you inject just 0.1 ml of it intradermally, it gives rise to immediate hypersensitivity reaction. A hydatid cyst measuring of about more than 10 centimeter in size, if it is ruptured internally, just assume what anaphylactic reaction will it give in the patient. So if the person is infected with hydatid disease, definitely surgical removal of hydatid cyst without rupture is very, very, very important. If it is ruptured even during surgery, it may lead to anaphylaxis and death may occur within few hours. Okay, so that's all for the today's topic on cystodes.